independent Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, and questions you may have. And please stay with us. Arena Buffalo News is coming up in just a moment.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. Your readers today are
Lita
and JJ Patak. And we'll open as we do with the weather. The winter is here, and I saw my first ice fisherman today over on the Black Rock Channel. It's not as cold. It'll be a nice thing with a little icy mix this morning. Yeah, let's all jump up and cheer. Turning breezy this afternoon with a bit of snow and rain at times. Be slippery with a high of 38. A couple of snow showers tonight with a low of 26, and colder tomorrow with a couple of flurries with a high of 31 and a low of 22. And Thursday will be low clouds with a high of 26 and a low of 13. Friday we'll have mostly sunny and cold with a high of 23 and a low of 17. Saturday will be sunshine and a few clouds with a high of 31 and a low of 18. And it looks like the worst of the freezing might be kind of moving past us.
Knock on wood.
Sunday will be overcast with snow possible with a high of 37 and a low of 35. And Monday will be low clouds with a high of 31 and a low of 21. And the high yesterday was 20 degrees with a low of -9. The normal high is 32. The normal low is 18. The record high is 62 back in 1925, and the record low is -20 in 1934. And nationally, Waco, Texas had 85 degrees, and good old Watertown, New York had -27 degrees. And the sun rose today behind those clouds at 7:20 a.m. and will set tonight at 5:40 p.m. And the moon rose this morning behind the clouds at 2:25 a.m. and it'll set at 11:09 a.m.
Okay, starting on the front page, emails reveal that DEC knew for weeks how toxic Cheesemakers' wastewater was. State officials knew the water in Issawa Creek could have been deadly for fish for at least 2 weeks before taking action to rein in pollution coming from Great Lakes Cheese in Franklinville, according to newly released email records from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Dairy wastewater discharge from the Cheesemaker in Cattaraugus County killed tens of thousands of fish and other aquatic wildlife in the popular fishing creek in August. DEC Commissioner Amanda Lufton told the Buffalo News in November that her agency really quickly jumped and responded immediately. As soon as we saw exceedances, we were on the ground, literally in the creek. However, emails between the DEC and Great Lakes Cheese and related documents show the agency waited 2 weeks to take action and stop the toxic discharge coming from the Cheesemaker. The Buffalo News requested the documents on the 8th of September under the New York Freedom of Information Law and received them in mid-January. Great Lakes Cheese was issued a wastewater discharge permit in 2022 by the DEC. It allowed the facility to discharge up to 900,000 gallons of its treated dairy wastewater into Issawa Creek every day, as long as it was cleaned enough to protect the health and ecosystem of the creek. A massive fish and wildlife die-off was reported by the DEC on the 28th of August, and the public was advised to avoid all contact with the water. The recreational advisory remained in effect until the 21st of November. On the 13th of August, Douglas Stoddard, Environmental Health and Safety Manager at Great Lakes Cheese, emailed Ricky Smith, an assistant engineer in DEC's Water Division, according to the email records. Stoddard notified Smith that the company had gotten lab results back from water samples taken on the 15th of July. Those results, detailed in the email, revealed that the company's wastewater discharge into Issawa Creek had exceeded permitted limits on 4 parameters: total dissolved solids, ammonia, phosphorus, and biochemical oxygen demand. It appears we sent too much product down to the digester and have upset the biological balance, Stoddard wrote in his first email. I would expect that these numbers will repeat due to the condition of the digester. Smith responded and said he would pass the results along to the regional water engineer at the DEC for his awareness, according to the email records. The regional water engineer is responsible for identifying permit violations and implementing ways for a facility to come back into compliance, according to DEC website. The next day, on the 14th of August, Stoddard sent another email to the DEC's Smith to say Great Lakes Cheese had again exceeded its wastewater permit on the 16th and 17th of July, this time on total dissolved solids, ammonia, and phosphorus. The email records received by the Buffalo News did not include a reply by Smith to the 14th of August email from Stoddard. Other emails exchanged between Great Lakes Cheese and DEC employees in August included other mentions of permit violations for both wastewater effluent and air pollution. The DEC said it first received reports of a fish kill event in Issawa Creek on the 26th of August. On the 27th of August, Great Lakes Cheese was contacted by an attorney for the DEC, as well as Commissioner Lefton, according to the email records. I gave you a call and it went straight to voicemail, so I am emailing you as well, Lefton wrote in an email sent the evening of the 27th of August. There is a significant incident unfolding on the Issawa Creek where Great Lakes Cheese discharges. Please call me ASAP. Emails exchanged following the 27th of August show the DEC and Great Lakes Cheese working together to monitor the health of the creek, responding to media questions and to protests. They also include information about rerouted milk deliveries after the plant was shut down and planning how to restart the cheese-making operation. On the 6th of October, the DEC ordered Great Lakes Cheese to pay up to $475,000 in penalties and take measures to help improve the condition of the creek. The company must also fix its wastewater treatment system. The DEC said Great Lakes Cheese didn't tell them the whole story. In an emailed statement to the news on Friday, a DEC spokesperson said Great Lakes Cheese had repeatedly violated New York State water quality requirements and withheld information from the agency about the severity of the operational issues at the Franklinville plant. Appropriate notifications were made internally by DEC staff when the July data was received, the spokesperson wrote in the statement. The limited information reported by the facility in mid-August did not fully convey the significance of operational issues at the plant, and Great Lakes Cheese withheld important information regarding plant upsets that resulted in a malfunction of the plant's digester and membrane bioreactor system. Great Lakes Cheese has previously apologized for the damage to the creek and said in an email statement to the news Monday that it's continuing to work with the DEC. Great Lakes Cheese takes its obligations seriously, and it has been working closely with the DEC throughout this process and will continue to do so as we monitor our operations at the Franklinville facility moving forward, the company said in an email. The DEC knew the cheesemaker could have been harming the health of the creek since it started operations in November of 2024. The agency had received monthly reports from the company detailing that it had often exceeded permitted limits on phosphorus, biochemical oxygen demand, and total dissolved solids. JJ?
Thank you. Troubled Rochester nursing home hit with $666,000 state fine. This is from John Harris of the News. A troubled Rochester area nursing home, which is operated by a downstate company that has also skilled nursing facilities in Buffalo and Batavia, was just hit with the largest fine issued by the state health department in the last 24 years. Waterview Heights Rehabilitation and Nursing Center, a 229-bed for-profit nursing home in the Charlotte neighborhood, received a $666,000 state fine in mid-December related to the two inspections that uncovered resident abuse and neglect, significant medication errors, and insufficient staffing, according to the stipulation and order posted online Friday. Prior to the fine against Waterview Heights, the largest fine the state had issued was $88,000 against a Long Island nursing home in 2020, according to state enforcement records that date to January 2002. This is extremely unusual since the state fines tend to be infrequent and when imposed low, said Richard J. Mollett, Executive Director of the Long-Term Care Community Coalition, a nonprofit focused on bolstering quality care in nursing homes and other residential settings. Waterview Heights has been operated since mid-2022 by the Grand Healthcare System of Long Island. The chain owns many nursing homes, including the 3-star or average Grand Rehabilitation and Nursing at Batavia and the 2-star or below average Delaware Oak Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing in Buffalo. Caretree Health of Rochester has been managing Delaware Oak since last year. The Grand at Batavia and Delaware Oaks were last issued state fines in 2022. Waterview Heights, meanwhile, has been on a federal watch list comprising the country's poorest performing nursing homes for more than 2 years. Grand Healthcare did not respond to requests seeking comment for this story. Despite the $666,000 assessed fine, Waterview Heights may end up paying only $100,000. The state said the $566,000 will be waived if the nursing home complies with the terms of the stipulation. Those terms include retaining the services of an independent quality monitor chosen by the health department that will oversee the nursing home's plan of correction and submit quarterly progress reports to the state for a year. Health Department spokesperson Marissa Crary on Friday confirmed that an independent quality monitor has been placed at Waterview Heights. In our role as regulator, holding operators accountable for the quality of care they provide remains a top priority for the New York State Health Department of Health, Crary said. The deficiencies at Waterview Heights were identified through state inspections in September of 2024 and May of 2025. Violations uncovered in the 2024 inspection led to $184,000 in fines, or nearly 28% of the fine total. More significantly, the state found that 4 residents were subjected to sexual abuse from other residents, while 1 resident was physically abused by a roommate. None of those incidents were promptly reported or rectified, according to the state, which tabulated a $50,000 fine for the nursing home for failing to keep 5 residents free from abuse. Further, Waterview Heights failed to ensure that residents were free from significant medication errors for 32 of the 46 resident cases the state reviewed, leading to $64,000 in fines. Another $22,000 in penalties came from the nursing home failing to properly store all drugs and biologics. The rest of the fine, $482,000, came from issues identified in the May of 2025 inspection. The bulk of that, $426,000, came from the 213 violations of keeping residents free from significant medication errors. This state found no documented evidence that residents received significant medications over the course of several days, including insulin, high blood pressure medication and antidepressants, antibiotics, and drugs to treat kidney disease. In the full review, the state found no documented evidence that 193 residents received their medications on multiple days from February 13th of 2025 to February 17th of 2025. It also found the same lack of documentation for 213 residents from March 21st to March 10th, and resident neglect led to $32,000 in fine. In one example, at 10:22 a.m. March 9th, an inspector found a resident lying on the floor with their nephrostomy tube coming out of the right side of their abdomen and stretched to a urine collection bag hanging by the side of the bed. The inspector saw no dressing over the nephrostomy insertion site, and the tubing was not secured to the resident's body. That resident was transferred to a hospital on March 11th due to the dislodged nephrostomy tube. Once back at the nursing home, the state found on March 17th that the resident again had no dressing on the insertion site, and the tubing was not secure to their body. From the May inspection, Waterview Heights was also fined $14,000 for failing to ensure sufficient nursing staff at the home, and all of the deficiencies cited by the state were marked corrected at various times between April 14th and August 4th. And measures taken by Waterview Heights included facility-wide education and training for staff, and to address understaffing, an increase in staff bonuses, and additional staff agency staff usage according to the state records, and to address medication errors, a look-back audit was conducted to identify any affected residents, and all impacted residents were reviewed by the medical provider. In addition, an audit was developed to review medication administration records daily, and after a local rally in October demanding accountability from Waterview Heights, Bruce Gendron, Vice President of the Grant Healthcare System, said in a statement that many violations at the nursing home had been corrected and that the facility was making progress with management changes, processes, procedures, and staffing over the past 6 months.
That's horrifying.
That's awful.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. And in our editorial entitled Disastrous Mistake, picture driving west on Porter Avenue and with the intention to merge onto northbound Interstate 190. You're near the entrance to the Peace Bridge and carefully take the route that will avoid crossing an international boundary. Or so you think. Instead, you make a driving mistake that appears irreversible, and it possibly of epic proportions. As reported by the News J Tokaz, this is what happened to Shanvi Huseynov, a University at Buffalo research from Azerbaijan. Huseynov was retained by border agents after he was unable to turn around at the Peace Bridge and accidentally crossed into Canada on the 7th of January. Huseynov's attorney, Sienna McLean, said her client was put into a position where he was on a confusing roadway with no opportunity to safely turn around. I've been there. Huseynov has no criminal history and holds a visa that allows him to work in the U.S. through 2029. None of that mattered. When he returned to Buffalo, Border Patrol agents stopped him from entering the U.S. and transferred him to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents who took him to the Batavia Detention Center. He was then transferred to an ICE detention center in rural Michigan, where he remained until recently. The situation is frustrating, infuriating, and wrong. Though steps to mitigate the problem are beginning, it should have been anticipated. Assemblyman John Rivera and State Senator April Baskin, both Democrats from Buffalo, wrote to the Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority and the State Department of Transportation demanding changes to the current design, saying that it undermines safety and efficiency. Describing in a letter, quote, unacceptable risk created not by driver negligence but by infrastructure design failures, end quote, the lawmakers implored Eric Mecca, Regional Director for the State DOT Region 5, to do something. The lawmakers had already written to Ron Reines, former General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of Bridge Authority. They proposed that the authority immediately establish a shoulder or pull-over area before the U.S. Customs inspection point so that vehicles mistakenly entering the bridge plaza may exit safely through a padlocked gate at Vermont Street and Bustye Avenue. Reines retired from the authority in 2025, but to his credit, he responded to Rivera and Baskin. It probably wasn't what they wanted to hear. Reines explained that the 2016 bridge ramp redesign was a State Department of Transportation project. Good to know, but disappointing when searching for a solution to a problem that has existed since the DOT 10 years ago completed a redesign that helped restore Front Park, but also remove Baird Drive. Remember, Baird Drive ran through the park and often served as an escape for motorists who found themselves mistakenly headed toward the bridge. The redesign added a large roundabout on Porter Avenue that loads drivers onto the Peace Bridge ramp. Thomas Boyle, current CEO of Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority, said in an interview with the News that the authority does not track how often drivers unintentionally cross into Canada, but we understand it happens frequently. Mm-hmm. The New York Times reported on it last May, describing a Colombian asylum seeker who mistakenly drove across the Niagara River. The Times piece quoted a Canadian official as saying as many as 20 drivers a day make the same mistake. Rivera said the Peace Bridge Authority should take responsibility and care about the people they are using its space instead of pointing a finger at the state, city, and Customs and Border Protection. The good news is that New York State has stepped in. As reported By the News' John Harris, the State Department of Transportation has installed a portable sign at the Porter Avenue roundabout in Buffalo just before the Peace Bridge to try to reduce the number of drivers inadvertently crossing into Canada. The sign reads, "Right ramp to Canada only." It remains to be seen if this will be enough. If not, further action must be taken.
Well, let's hope that works.
Yes,
That is kind of a pain.
I have done it.
So have I. Oh, MAGA's new Save the Children campaign targets the LGBTQ+. This is from Anita Shabrioff. The latest nauseant from the MAGA types pretending to care about children was dished up last week, but amid the interment of kindergartners, a slashing of funds to catch child predators, and a measles outbreak at a detention center, you're forgiven for missing it. I'm talking about a coordinated campaign launched by the Religious Right to overturn gay marriage, arguing it harms children. The effort is a direct attack on the Supreme Court's 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges decision making same-sex marriage a fundamental right for equality under the 14th Amendment, but also seeks to engage churches on the issue and change public opinion. What disturbs me most is that the campaign is another disingenuous ploy by MAGA to use children as an excuse for attacking civil rights and attempting, Christian nationalist style, to impose religious values on general society. MAGA frames so much hate, especially around immigrants and diversity, as protection of children, and through decades of worth of conspiracy theory has attempted to paint LGBTQ plus parents as deviant and predatory. In reality, it's the MAGA folks who are traumatizing children. Our children are afraid. They're terrorized, Chantel Allen told me. She's a St. Paul, Minnesota school board member who was arrested recently for her part in the church protest of a pastor who is also an ICE official. And we're not just talking about immigrants, she continued. All kids are watching this, they're experiencing this, and they're carrying the terror in their bodies. What is this going to do for our society in 20 years? This campaign to undo marriage equality is just another injury inflicted on kids for political gain. It features 2 California cases that are meant to show how terrible any form of safe-sex parenting is, but mischaracterizes the facts for maximum outrage. The campaign also specifically targets in vitro fertilization and surrogacy as dangerous gateways to promoting LGBTQ plus families, an increasingly common position in far-right religious circles that would like to see more white women having babies through sex with white husbands. Attacking marriage equality isn't about protecting children any more than deporting immigrants is about stopping crime. Allowing it to be framed that way actually puts in danger the stability of the approximately 300,000 kids nationwide who are being raised by 832,000 in same-sex marriages. It endangers the physical and mental health of LGBTQ plus kids in any family who are growing up in a world that's increasingly hostile to them, with gender and identity hate crimes on the rise. And it endangers everyone who values a free and fair democracy that separates church and state by eroding the rights of the vulnerable as precedents for eroding the rights of whomever takes them off next. If the LGBTQ plus marriages aren't legally protected, how long before racists come along for the loving decision which legalized interracial marriages? Those behind the effort to undo racial equality or marriage equality say that by legalizing the ability for LGBTQ plus folks to tie the knot, America puts adult desires ahead of children's well-being, which is dependent on being raised in a home that includes a married man and woman. Never mind the millions of kids being raised by single parents, grandparents, looking at you, J.D. Vance, or other guardians who aren't the biological John and Jane mommy and daddy of conservative lore. Never mind the many same-sex marriages that don't include kids. Americans need to understand the threat that gay marriage poses to children and that natural marriage is directly connected to children protection, Kate Faust The leader of the campaign said in an interview with the Christian News website. Of course, the campaign also makes no mention of the hundreds of children currently held in detention camps around the country. On some days, the number of children locked up just by ICE, not Border Patrol or in the care of other agencies, has skyrocketed to 400 under Trump, according to Marshall Project. Outside of lockup, Black and brown children are being traumatized daily by the fear that they or their parents will be taken or even killed by federal agents. Thousands of kids across the country have stopped going to school and other public places for fear of endangering themselves or their families. Don't expect to see these folks campaigning to protect those kids. The campaign also ignores the fact that the Department of Justice funding to combat sex crimes against children was just slashed, leaving victims and prosecutors without crucial resources to fight that real and undoubtedly harmful exploitation of our youth by sex traffickers. And Epstein. I cannot even start on the Save the Children folks who seemingly ignore the victims of the sex crimes detailed in those files, many of them children at the time, while wringing their hands over families who don't look like their own. It is mind-blowing hypocrisy. None of this is about saving children, but framing it around protecting children is a powerful manipulation, a last-ditch effort as same-sex marriage does in fact become more accepted. Because who doesn't want to save our kids from whatever? So don't be surprised if this effort gains traction. As we head into elections, the MAGA machine will attempt to turn the lens away from immigration and back to old-school issues such as feminism, abortion, and same-sex marriage, which time and again in its base has been willing to vote on regardless of what else is happening. Because they actually don't care about kids. They care about power, and they're perfectly willing to exploit kids to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for an editorial cartoon, we have a rather interesting one here from Adam Ziglis and the Buffalo News. And we have a tall tower with King KKK Kong climbed up as a giant ape figure with a head like Donald Trump wearing a crown, carrying a red sign that says racism. And small in the background, you've got the White House and a bunch of little red flags, and it says, in case you missed the first 500 red flags.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
Tell us what you really mean, Adam.
Okay, and in the My View column, this is from Leslie Riddle of Lockport. A kind encounter with Marv Levy. The news ran a story in February of 2017 about Marv Levy writing another book, Go Cubs Go, Baseball's Never Give Up Story. I kept this article because my son Matt is a Marv Levy fan, and I wanted to try to have Coach Levy sign it for him for the following Christmas. Matt's been a Bills fan since he was a young boy. His kindergarten teacher, Mr. Lippman, realized Matt's interest from comments he made about the Bills in newspaper articles that were lined on the art table. He was so intrigued with Matt's knowledge that he asked him to be a part of the school's 5th grade Buffalo Bills trivia competition in which Matt aced 100%. Around that time, he became interested in Bills cornerback David Poole and was able to meet him at a Buffalo Bills basketball game played against the Barker Raiders, my childhood hometown. After the game, Matt and David met, and David ended up giving him his autographed Bills wristband. Matt had the privilege of meeting many Buffalo Bills through the years. He was at an airport layover on his way home from an away game when someone came up and from behind him and commented on his Bills backpack. Mac turned around, and that someone was Jim Kelly. In November 2017, I bought 2 of Marv's books, one for Matt and one for Jordan, the grandson of my dear friend Linda. Attempting to have these signed, I made phone calls and was eventually connected with former Buffalo Bill Marlon Kerner, who kindly contacted Marv for me. He told him of my intentions, and Marv gave Marlon permission to share his address with me so I could send him the books. Along with the books, I sent pictures of Matt and Jordan, a letter describing each of them, and postage to cover the cost to send back. I excitedly waited. On the Friday morning before Christmas, I texted Marlon and told him I still hadn't received the books and asked if he may have heard from Coach Levy regarding them. He had, and asked my permission to give Marv my phone number since Marv no longer had it. Sure, no problem. On Friday night, I got the call. Marv Levy told me who he was and added, "But you can call me Marv." He told me there was a shipping problem and was concerned that the books wouldn't make it by Christmas. He also told me he had a lot of admiration for my son, who is a firefighter. I do too. We visited for a few minutes. That night I prayed that the books would arrive by Christmas. At 8 a.m. Saturday morning, my husband saw the mail truck in front of our home and said, "Your books are here." One day left, and they made it. On Christmas night, Matt came over after working straight 24 hours overtime. He opened his book, and in amazement, he read all that Marv wrote to him, along with a letter he wrote to me. I took pictures of Matt and sent them to Marv and Marlon, and I thanked them both for all they did for making such an incredible difference to Matt, Jordan, and myself. As it turned out, I got to meet Coach Levy when Marv was in town in 2022. Matt took me to Orchard Park for my birthday. We visited it and took pictures, and of course, Matt had his infamous Marv Levy sweater on while standing next to the great legend himself. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
That's a nice story.
It is.
Compared to everything else that we have happening, it's always nice to hear a good story.
Yes, it is.
Now from another voice. Subject is dissent, and it's from the Reverend Bobby LaValle, who is the Unitarian Universalist Community Minister. Last week, I flew from Buffalo to Minneapolis responding to a national call for clergy issued by an Minneapolis Interfaith Coalition. I was joined by 700 clergy from all across America, and I'll never forget what I saw there. I don't need to tell you about the evil that is the federal occupation. If you're paying attention to it and you're unmoved, I suggest you read Matthew 25, verse 40, and have a conversation with your local clergy person. Instead of the evil, I want to talk about the beauty and abundance I saw there. I saw ordinary people doing ordinary things that were courageous because they never knew if ICE would beat them for doing these things. I saw them delivering breast milk to a child whose mother had been deported in the middle of breastfeeding. I saw people delivering groceries to the neighbors too scared to leave the house. I saw people driving kids to school so they got there without being abducted. I saw a church set up a clinic in their basement for folks who were too scared to go to their regular doctor. And I saw people who insisted on witnessing firsthand and recording the carnage that ICE is bringing to their neighborhoods, knowing they could end up like Renee Good or Alex Preddy. Don't call what people are doing protest. It's mutual aid and legal observation. This was about taking care of their neighbors on a scale I've never seen. I asked a friend who was deep in the work if there was something about the culture of Minnesota that made this possible. They paused for a moment and then answered, "People are saying that this kind of response started with George Floyd in 2020, but they aren't seeing the big picture. The spirit of this has been around for decades, and it's because of three things. First, we have a well-established labor movement, and labor has been with us all the way. Second, we have challenging weather that impacts everyone. And finally, we take pride in being good neighbors. Pushing someone's car when they're stuck in the snow is mandatory, whether you know them or not. Strong unions, bad weather, and good neighbors. My Buffalo siblings, this is us. We can form a resistance like Minneapolis. The seeds are already there, and there are good folks stepping up all the time. Let's do this."
Amen. Amen. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 33 minutes past the hour. And from Susan Estridge, and an opinion, another week of strife out of the White House. Why would the President of the United States post a video of former President Barack Obama and the former First Lady Michelle Obama as monkeys? Writing on X, Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, an ardent Trump's defender, reposted it, praying it was fake because it's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. The president should remove it. He didn't. The White House acknowledged that the president posted it. Caroline Levitt stated, "This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage and report on something today that actually matters to the American public." That matters. Fake outrage? Mine's real. It's no way for a current president to treat a former one. No way, indeed, to treat the only black president in our history, and no set of circumstances in which, as Scott rightly recognized, such an image wouldn't be seen as smacking of racism. Does Donald Trump really find racism funny? Trump isn't just an overgrown kid with an addiction to the screen. He sets the tone for a nation. When the president becomes the bully in chief, with no limits of civility and the ready defense that his critics lack a sense of humor, then every parent in America who is trying to teach their kids the meaning of civility and respect is the loser. When he posts a racist meme out of context, what message does that send? And why is he sending it? In other news, in what the Wall Street Journal calls the latest step by the government to strip immigrants of due process rights so they can be deported more quickly, the Trump administration is moving to take away immigrants' rights to appeal their deportation decisions. Under the new rules, which are to take effect next month, immigrants will be given 10 days rather than the current 30 days to appeal a deportation order. Their appeals will be automatically dismissed after 15 days unless a majority of immigration appeals judges, who the Trump administration handpicks, vote to hear them. And they call that justice? Immigration judges aren't like federal judges, appointed for life and thus, in theory, independent. Immigration judges serve at the will of their employers in the Justice Department. They work for Pam Bondi. They can be dismissed for not doing the administration's bidding. They are currently drastically shorthanded and backlogged, a situation only made worse by the firing of around 100 immigration judges last year because they were seen as overly permissive in accepting claims. This month, the administration announced that it will close the immigration court in San Francisco after slashing the number of judges there last year from 21 to 4. To compensate for the judges they cut, the administration has proposed that up to 600 military lawyers serve as temporary immigration judges, a step that pushes the war analogy onto immigrants further than it should go. Immigration law is not governed by military law. Clearly, we need more immigration judges, but contrary to the reasoning of the Department of Homeland Security, administrative warrants issued by immigration judges are no substitute for the judicial warrants required for the Fourth Amendment.
Good grief. Where is this country heading? Well, from Kathleen Parker, why South Carolina leads the nation in growth and measles. From Columbia, South Carolina, South Carolina continues to seize national attention in surprising and not so surprising ways. As to the former, the Palmetto State is the fastest growing state in the country at the time when it has the nation's biggest measles outbreak, owing in part to religious objections to vaccines. The rapid population growth driven by affordability, job availability, and climate is statewide. The measles outbreak is concentrated in the upstate or region in the northwest part, specifically in Spartanburg County, the center of which is Spartanburg. The city of roughly 40,000 is in what is known as Bob Jones country, referring to the namesake Evangelical Christian University in nearby Greenville. This leads us to the not-so-surprising part. When religion and science butt heads in the Deep South, you can confidently bet on God. The area of the country where measles has found a home, 876 cases and counting, offers public, charter, and private schools and Pentecostal and fundamental churches where the Bible is interpreted liberally. Never mind that the Bible doesn't mention measles vaccines, religious conviction is partly responsible for the decision of far too many residents to put their children and family at risk. Some schools have vaccination rate as low as 20%. Last year, 10% of Spartanburg County school students, nearly 6,000 children, got exemptions from vaccination rules that did not meet certain requirements. Of Spartanburg County students, about 8% had religious exemptions, which are easy to come by. The state requires only a notarized request, but no doctors or preachers imprimatur. Anti-vaccine messages from the Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said no vaccines are safe and effective, has led to mixed messages about the MMR vaccine, which protects against measles, mumps, and rubella. Kennedy has said that the vaccine is the best way to ward off the viruses while also casting doubt on its safety. Many in the anti-vaccine community are convinced that the vaccine causes autism, a debunked Kennedy claimed. There are also concerns that the vaccine contains fetal cells or that they have a lot of aborted fetus tissue, in Kennedy's words. They do. No, they don't. Moral objections to abortion have fueled the fetal cell debate in recent years. There's a speck of truth to Kennedy's obscene statement, but only in the most tangential way. Put another way, it's inaccurate. Kennedy's pharmaceutical background and training can be traced to a years-long heroin addiction. Otherwise, his last name is Kennedy, which President Trump seemingly can't resist for his cachet, Associated Wealth and Performing Arts Center. Trump put his name before John F. Kennedy's and placed the late president's nephew in charge of the nation's health. A short primer on the vaccine Kennedy has sowed confusion about. Each of the 3 viruses in the MMR vaccine is created separately. The viruses are grown in culture cells, which are purified to remove cellular material. The measles virus is grown in chick embryo cell cultures, but cells lines used to produce rubella, among other viruses, do come from fetal cells procured from 2 elective abortions performed in the early 1960s in Europe. Cells, or rather fetal fibroblast cell lines, were taken from the ill-fated fetuses once, and every MMR vaccine since has been created from those same cells. While many Christians and others abhor using fetal material for any reason, the ultimate theological take on the issue comes not from Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, who recently tried to school Pope Leo the 14th about the Bible's stance on immigration, but from the Vatican. While still condemning fetal stem research, the Vatican has said that Catholic moral theology allows vaccines from those cell lines if no other alternatives exist. It is indeed odd to be wading through these discussions in the 21st century, but stranger things happen often these days, at least in South Carolina. Even so, those who call this state home would rather live here than anywhere else, and apparently so would everybody else. Just please, before you cross the state line, be sure to get your shots. All of them. If you insist on joining the human deluge heading this way, you're going to need them.
Yepper. Okay, so in the Arctic, believe it or not, a key climate threat is taking a back seat. As rising global temperatures speed up the melting of sea ice in the Arctic Ocean, it's set off a boom of ships taking routes that previously were frozen and not traversable. The increase in marine Arctic traffic, which received increased attention as President Trump pushed for the U.S. to take over Greenland, has come with a heavy environmental cost. Black carbon, or soot, that spews from ships and makes the ice melt even faster. Several countries are making a case for ships in the Arctic to use cleaner fuels that cause less pollution in meeting this week with international shipping regulators. Glaciers, snow and ice covered in the soot emitted by ships, have less ability to reflect the sun. Instead, the sun's heat is absorbed, helping to make the Arctic the fastest warming place on Earth. In turn, melting Arctic sea ice can affect weather patterns around the world. It ends up in a never-ending cycle of increased warming, said Cyan Pryor, lead advisor for the Clean Arctic Alliance, a coalition of nonprofits focused on the Arctic and shipping. We need to regulate emissions and black carbon in particular. Both are completely unregulated in the Arctic. In December, France, Germany, the Solomon Islands, and Denmark proposed that the International Maritime Organization require ships traveling in Arctic waters to use polar fuels, which are lighter and emit less carbon pollution than the widely used maritime fuels known as residuals. The proposal includes steps that companies would take to comply and the geographic locations it would apply to, all ships traveling north of the 60th parallel. The proposal was expected to be presented to the IMO's Pollution Prevention and Response Committee this week and possibly another committee in April. A 2024 ban on using a type of residual known as heavy fuel oil in the Arctic has had only modest impact so far, partly because of loopholes. The push to reduce black carbon, which studies have shown has a warming impact 1,600 times that of carbon dioxide over a 20-year span, is happening at a time of conflicting interests, both internationally and among the countries that have coastlines in the Arctic. In recent months, Trump's periodic comments about the need to own Greenland to bolster U.S. security have raised many issues from Greenland's then inside Arctic nations, which are most impacted by black carbon and other shipping pollution. There are internal tensions around such regulations. Iceland is a good example. While the country is a world leader in green technologies, such as carbon capture and the use of thermal energies for heating, conservatives say the country has made less progress on regulating pollution in its seas. That's because the fishing industry, one of the country's most important, holds a huge sway. The industry is happy with profits, unhappy with the taxes, and not engaged in issues like climate or biodiversity, said Arne Finneson, board chair of the Iceland Nature Conservation Association. Finneson added that the cost of using cleaner fuel or electrifying fleets has also prompted resistance. I think the government is waking up, but they still have to wait for the fishing industry to say yes, he said. The country has not taken a position on the pending Polar Fuels proposal. In a statement, Iceland's Ministry of Environment, Energy and Climate said the proposal was positive with regard to its purpose and basic content, but that further study was needed. The statement added that Iceland supports stronger measures to counter shipping emissions and reduce black carbon. Soot pollution has increased in the Arctic as cargo ships, fishing boats, and even some cruise liners are traveling more in the waters that connect the northernmost part of Iceland, Greenland, Canada, Russia, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and the U.S. Between 2013 and 2023, the number of ships entering waters north of the 60th parallel increased by 37%, according to the Arctic Council, an intergovernmental forum made up of the 8 countries with territory in the Arctic. In that same period, the total distance traversed by ships in the Arctic increased by 111%. Black carbon emissions have also increased. In 2019, almost 2,700 metric tons of black carbon were emitted from ships north of the 60th parallel, compared with over 3,300 metric tons in 2024. According to a study by Energy and Environmental Research Associates, the study found that fishing boats were the biggest source of black carbon. It also found that the 2024 ban on heavy fuel oil would only result in a small reduction in black carbon. Waivers and exceptions allow some ships to continue using it until 2029. Environmental groups in concerned countries see regulating ship fuel as the only way to realistically reduce black carbon. That is because getting nations to agree to limit traffic would likely be impossible. The lure of fishing, resource extraction, and shorter shipping distances is too great. Ships can save days on some trips between Asia and Europe by sailing through the Arctic. Still, the path known as the Northern Sea Route is only traversable a few months of the year. And even then, ships must be accompanied by icebreakers. Those dangers combined with Arctic pollution concerns have driven some companies to pledge to stay away, at least for now.
Thank you. From Washington News, Trump's unconventional pricing plan for drugs gets a lukewarm reception. This is from Leah DeGroot, CQ Roll Call. President Trump's unconventional plan to lower prescription drug prices is being met with a skeptical eye from Republicans as Congress places a greater focus on drug pricing ahead of the midterm elections. Trump's plan is to establish most favored nation pricing to bring U.S. prescription drug prices more in line with what other countries pay, part of a push for broader health care legislation from Congress. Trump didn't wait for Congress or traditional rulemaking, taking matters into his own hands by striking individual deals with drug companies to lower their prices, largely using the threat of tariffs as leverage. Now he wants Congress to codify what he's done. Senator for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Mehmet Oz came to the Hill last month to pitch Senate Finance Committee Republicans on the president's health care plan, of which drug pricing is a major part. But some key Republicans say they still have questions about their role in Trump's plan for most favored nation pricing, a policy idea that involves referencing international drug prices when determining prices in the U.S. market. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, a Senate Finance Committee member who chairs the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, said he had spoken with White House staff about the proposal. It has to be codified, right? Cassidy said, but there's a lot of details to work out if you even think it's a good idea. During the signing ceremony for the appropriations package, Trump touted the plan as delivering the lowest prices of anywhere in the world and urged Republicans to campaign on the issue of the midterms later this year. The Republican Party should be able to win the midterms on that alone, Trump said. That's the biggest thing there is. His health care plan states that congressional action would build off Trump's landmark actions that made insulin more affordable in his first term and the successful voluntary negotiations following his recent executive order to lower drug prices. Voluntarily negotiated deals with the administration will be grandfathered in, it states. Selling the proposal to the president's allies in Congress may require further outreach to Republicans. Senator Steve Daines, a Republican from Montana who was on the Finance Committee and was in the meeting with Oz, said he had questions about how to maintain U.S. innovation in drug manufacturing. We still have a lot of questions we're asking, but I found the briefing to be very valuable, he said. Currying support among Republican leadership might be even more of an uphill battle. Trump previously attempted to include most favored nation policy in the reconciliation law, but leadership poured cold water over it, with House Speaker Mike Johnson, the Republican from Louisiana, saying he wasn't a big fan of the proposal. Republicans have historically been averse to health policies that would interfere with the free market. For example, many spoke out against giving Medicare the authority to negotiate drug prices through President Joe Biden's 2022 reconciliation law. Cassidy raised serious concern that the policy would put a damper on research and development. Most favored nation pricing sure looks a lot to me like an effort to regulate drug prices and establish some sort of price controls within the pharmaceutical sector. Juliette Kubanski, the deputy director of the program on Medicare policy at the health research organization KFF, said in the interview that has historically not been a popular idea with Republicans. Senate Democrats, for their part, said they were open to working with Republicans on such legislation. Several bills on the issue have already been introduced to this Congress. Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, leads a bill that would direct CMS to implement rules directing drug companies to lower prices to be comparable with what other developed countries pay. Senator Peter Welch, a Democrat from Vermont, sponsors legislation alongside Senator Josh Hawley, the Republican from Missouri, that would prohibit drug companies from charging list pricing in the United States that are higher than the international average. Speaking last week, Welch was skeptical about whether the GOP is serious about passing most favored nation legislation despite the bipartisan nature of this bill. I talked to the president about reference pricing in 2017. He said it's 2026. Nothing's happened. I just haven't seen any evidence in our committees of Republicans being interested in this issue, Senator Ron Wyden, the Democrat from Oregon, said during the same briefing. We're ready to go. Further complicating the policy's future is that Trump released sparse details about the individual deals, which Kubanski said made it hard to discern what the administration actually wants to codify. She added that some manufacturers have been incentivized to come to the table with Trump to forestall an even broader implementation of most favored nation pricing. She added that many of the deals were strictly for drugs and Medicaid, which already pays among the lowest drug price for drugs. The White House did not return a request for comments seeking details on the drug pricing proposal. The Pharmaceutical Reform Alliance, a group advocating lower drug pricing policies that backs most favored nation policy, said in a statement that codifying the policy will help lower drug prices and shield consumers from industry influence. If Congress wants to truly tackle America's affordability crisis and not to win with the American people, codification is the way. J.D. Hayworth, a former congressman from Arizona who was a group spokesperson, said in a statement. Tangential to the administration's push for most favored nation is Trump's push for direct-to-consumer prescription drug access. Trump on Thursday unveiled his TrumpRx website, which essentially serves as a hub connecting people to coupons and direct-to-consumer links with popular medications like GLP-1S. Kubanski said Trump X is attractive for pharmaceutical companies because they can access consumers directly, but the initiative might be limited in scope because most Americans access medications through their insurance.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that's 716-821-5555. Cammie M. Callahan, Nee Sobel. Thomas S. Ferrugio. Ruth A. Gargella. Robert T. Habdo. Richard P. Inzina. Frederick King Keller. Elaine M. Kubisti. Nee Jerzejewski. Carol C. Lane. John M. Lapping. Mary Eleanor Redmond, known as Aaron, Nee Finnegan. Joan Sieber or Cyber, Sieber, Nee Krishak, and Marion Tasman. Again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And we'll go through a little entertainment with Royal Stars. If your birthday is today, you are original and ambitious. You value respect and recognition. You're an empathetic problem solver. If you're Aries, today you're best off if you coordinate your needs with the needs of others and work in conjunction with them. Be open to this. Tonight, expand your horizons. Taurus, your ambition is aroused. Don't hesitate to go after what you want and demand an advantage. People are attracted to you today. Tonight, check your finances. Gemini, no matter what you do for a living in the next 3 weeks, people will ask for your advice about how to make something look better. Your ability to charm bosses and VIPs will be excellent. Tonight, cooperate and listen. Cancer, try to get out of town the next 3 weeks. Your desire to travel for pleasure will be strong. If you can't travel, then be a tourist in your own city. Tonight, get organized. Leo, money and favors from others can come to you today while you want the freedom to do your own thing and enjoy yourself. Meet friends. Check out sports events and the arts. Tonight, socialize. Virgo, for the next 3 weeks, your relationships with partners, spouses, and close friends will be sensitive and meaningful and affectionate. It'll be the perfect time to bury the hatchet or to build bridges. Tonight, relax. Libra, if you're involved with competitive sports or the performing arts, you're on your game. Find outlets for your creative talents. A work-related romance might begin. Tonight, discussions. Scorpio, romance will be affectionate, meaningful, and idealistic the next 3 weeks. This same energy can also ignite your creative talents, which is good news for artists. Meanwhile, deal with increased chaos on the home front. Play or act together. Tonight, check your belongings. Sagittarius, enjoy entertaining at home. You might redecorate or do something to make where you live more attractive. Tonight, you win. Capricorn, discussions with others will be meaningful. Act on your money-making ideas and research might pay off. Tonight, enjoy solitude. Aquarius, you have lots of energy with both the sun and fiery Mars in your sign, which is why you need to find an outlet to channel this drive. Physical exercise is one option. It's also a good day to share your hopes and dreams for the future with a friend. You will enjoy buying beautiful things today and tonight. Be friendly. And finally, Pisces. The next 3 weeks are a special time for you to buy wardrobe items. You will like what you find. Make an effort to shop for something you want or need, and today you are noticed by others. Be aware of this in case you have to do some damage control. Tonight, you're noticed.
And you are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for February 10th on a Tuesday on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more reading after this short break. Your readers today are
JJ Patek
and Lita.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website. a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Lita
and JJ Patek. And from Buffalo Next, a new pharmacy is coming to the refashioned Perry Homes. This is from Jonathan Epstein. Tenants of the redeveloped Commodore Perry Homes will soon be able to get their prescriptions on site from a new pharmacy operated by Evergreen Health. The Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority is teaming up with a nonprofit community health provider to open a pharmacy on the first floor of one of the 3 5-story buildings under construction along South Park Avenue and Louisiana Street. It'll be located at 448 South Park and will be constructed to include privacy walls consisting of drywall partitions with security mesh within, as well as additional safety and security window film on glazed openings to prevent glass from breaking and protecting staff. Those measures require variances from the Green Code, which BMHA is seeking Wednesday from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The privacy and safety of the pharmacy staff cannot be achieved by other feasible means. The proposed partitions will allow ample daylight inside of the working spaces while providing an elevated level of safety to the staff, BMHA and its architect, Philadelphia-based WRT, wrote in their application. The proposed privacy walls are standard and common practice for providing privacy, security, and safety of the people working inside the pharmacy. BMHA is also seeking variances to install 3 large backlit aluminum address signs for the 3 buildings, which are larger than normally permitted to reflect the size of the building themselves. The new pharmacy is part of the transformation of Perry, a $254 million state-funded project that has seen the demolition of 24 empty low-rise buildings and includes the construction of 24 2- or 3-story townhouses and walk-up buildings, plus the 3 5-story buildings, which are with more than 400 new apartments and 9,000 square feet of commercial space. Also coming up Wednesday, the U.S. subsidiary of Canadian solar power generation company Powerbank Corporation is seeking a zoning variance for having only 10 feet to 20 feet of shoreline buffer along the Buffalo River instead of 50 feet for its proposed 2.2 megawatt solar project at 1037 South Park Avenue. The project involves 227 structures of 12 feet in height. Rochester-based Abundant Solar Power and affiliate SUNN 1016 LLC plan to erect a series of ballasted fixed-tilt solar arrays with more than 5,434 solar panels, as well as a battery energy storage system and transformer on 13.9 acres of the 18.9-acre former South Buffalo landfill, which is owned by John Williams South Buffalo Development. The battery storage system will be manufactured by Buffalo-based Verity, also owned by Williams. The company said the variances for the watershed setback is the only feasible path for the project. Pending State Department of Environmental Conservation and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approval, as well as site plan approval, construction would take about 8 months. Carol's Restaurant Group, one of the largest restaurant franchisees in the country and the largest operator of Burger Kings, plans to remodel his Burger King restaurant at 365 Amherst Street at the southwest corner of Grant Street to comply with the new image standards by the chain. But it won't have enough windows to meet transparency requirements because of where the sprinkler system fire protection components are located. The changes will make the building more transparent than it's been since it was built in 1993, but not enough to meet zoning code. Carroll said if the city fire marshal objected to its removing the sprinkler. Okay. Carroll said the city fire marshal objected to removal of the sprinkler system from where it is.
So if you know someone who has auto insurance or you yourself have one, you know how high the rates are. Well, Hochul wants to cut high auto insurance rates in New York. God bless her. Governor Kathy Hochul wants to be known as the champion of making life more affordable in New York. Her latest target is automobile insurance rates. Hochul last week called for a new state law to stop motorists from causing car crashes and then causing auto insurance premiums to rise through lawsuits she said too often lead to financial windfalls for reckless drivers and fraudsters. I don't want to have a system anymore that rewards dangerous behavior, Hochul told reporters while appearing in TAC's Auto Body and Service, a shop in Glenmont, just south of Albany. So if you're driving drunk, driving without a license, or committing a felony at the time of the crash or caused the crash or an accident, you should not get a payday. I'm not sure who can argue with that. We'll start by reforming our tort laws to protect people who play by the rules and insulate the personal injury system from abuse. Hochul, who has made affordability the theme of her $260 billion budget proposal and her 2026 re-election campaign, said New Yorkers pay auto insurance rates that average $4,000 a year, $1,500 higher than the national average. In 2025, insurance companies reported 43,800 incidents of suspected vehicular insurance fraud to the state's Department of Financial Services, an increase of 80% from 2020, Hochul's office said. The law now allows reckless drivers and fraudsters to file suits claiming they suffered emotional distress, allowing them to collect literally millions and millions of dollars from the premiums of regular policy owners, which means all of you, Hochul said. You can have a situation where someone causes the accident intentionally and gets a huge personal injury payout, Hochul said, or we're putting the brakes on that fraud. Enough is enough here in the state of New York. Obviously, this is taking on a big fight. It's been a problem for a while. It's getting worse, but nobody else is willing to stand up and say, why is this happening and how do we do something about it? Hochul said she supported people involved in crashes receiving fair compensation, but not a windfall from incidents that they caused or staged through fraud. She said other states have similar laws in place. Hochul's budget proposed a bill to modify the definition of serious injury, to eliminate manipulated criteria, limit the amount of non-economic damages awarded to uninsured drivers, intoxicated drivers, and drivers who commit a felony or flag the scene of a felony incident. Permit non-economic damages only if the plaintiff is not primarily at fault, and ensure that litigants being sued are held responsible for the damage they caused and not damage caused by other parties. Sabrina Rezzi, a spokesperson for the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, said Hochul's plan turns car crashes into a taxpayer-funded bailout for the insurance industry. Real affordability comes from what's proven to work: prior approval by regulators, returning excess insurers' profits, safer streets, and transparency, Rezzi said. Instead, this bill weakens worker protections by redefining serious injury to exclude workers. You can tell who is benefits by who's backing it: big insurance and ride-hailing giants, while working families and policyholders get stuck with the bill. Another bill in Hochul's budget would expand from 30 days to 60 days the period of time in which an insurance company can report a claim of suspected fraud to DFS. The bill would clarify right of an insurance company to deny a claim or assert a defense after the 30-day period when fraud is suspected. To become law, Hochul proposals would need to pass the state's Assembly and Senate, where insurance costs are expected to be among the top policy issues debated in the budget, which is due on the 1st of April. JJ.
Thank you. Williamsville East Athletic Chief charged with aggravated DWI. This is from Aaron Bessiker and Ben Chizimoto. Williamsville East High School's athletic director faces an aggravated driving while intoxicated charge in Niagara County. County Sheriff Mike Filicetti said. Melissa A. Spada, who is also an assistant principal at Williamsville East, was also charged with driving while intoxicated after what appears to have been a property damage crash. Filicetti said in an email, "The incident happened at about 12:41 a.m. at Sunday in Wheatfield," Filicetti said. Further details about the incident were not immediately available. The deputy who arrested Spada is still completing the report. The spokesman for the Williamsville Central School District said the district is aware of an incident involving an administrator. "We are committed to upholding the district values and take this matter seriously," spokesman Nicholas Filipowski said in an email. "We'll conduct a thorough investigation, gather all the information from law enforcement, and determine appropriate action." Filipowski declined further comment. An aggravated DWI charge is filed when authorities report that a driver's blood alcohol content was greater than 0.18. And according to the State Department of Motor Vehicles, a conviction involves a fine of between $1,000 and $2,500 and a maximum jail sentence of 1 year. Standard DWI blood alcohol content is 0.08 or higher. Spada, 34, was ticketed for failure to use a designated lane, the sheriff said. Spada was appointed to be a hybrid position at Williamsville East in February of 2024, according to school documents, with responsibility overseeing the school's athletics and building leadership at the high school. Her initial salary for that role was $94,500. A graduate of Williamsville East, Spada was previously a teacher on special assignment as an instructional technology coach. And from Mike Petro, small firms face a hard road to qualify for stadium work. As part of the Buffalo News new stadium construction process, or the Buffalo Bills new stadium construction process, the team has made an effort to get small businesses certified as minority and women-owned business enterprises, helping to open the door for more opportunities for them in construction and other industries. But for plenty of those businesses, getting certified remains an uphill climb. Over the past 2 years, 80 small businesses have reached out to the team's workforce and a development consultant developments by GEM to inquire about getting certified. Less than 20% of them have attained state or county certification to this point. Developments by GEM is offering workshops, programming, and informational sessions to businesses on how to get certified. The company was hired in February of 2024 to engage with local minority business owners, helping ensure diversity hiring goals are met on the stadium project. Still, many of these businesses have faced barriers that have not allowed them to complete the process. We had 80 businesses reach out and then realized there are a lot of barriers that these small businesses face that are out of our control. We still want to continue to support and work with them to get to a point where we are able to get them to certification, said Penny Samaya, Vice President of Stadium Relations for the bill, during Monday's Community Benefits Oversight Committee meeting. We understand that it's not an easy task, so our objective and goal is to always see where we can help provide help and improvements. He added, the heartbeat and focus of the work we're doing is to help provide small businesses with the opportunity to get certified. Developments by GEM has 44 of the 80 businesses registered for support classes and 37 complete the classes and getting through the application process. Of them, 24 have applied for MWBE certifications and 17 have been certified. There are 5 pending and 1 business was denied. That includes an array of business types, most in consulting and restaurant or food processing. Some of these barriers these businesses have faced in the certification process have been not having a business account or not having contracts or invoices for proof of services rendered or recent taxes not being filed. Our team has worked to kind of hold hands to make sure that if people are ready, or when they're ready, we are there to help them so they can submit that application, said Janice McKinney, who runs Developments by Jim. All of our efforts are not targeted on one profession. We are here to provide opportunities for everyone. The objective is to increase the number of certified NWBE businesses in the area and have that become a valuable resource for other future projects. While making sure goals for the use of minority, women, and military service disabled businesses are met for stadium construction, the economic impact team working on the project is aiming to build an inclusive group of contractors and small businesses that can take on projects beyond this one. That will be an important part of reaching lofty goals tied to the post-construction process. Also, as part of the community benefits agreement tied to the new stadium lease. New stadium concessionaire Legends will be expected to launch initiatives to maximize the participation of local, small, and disadvantaged businesses in retail, maintenance, and concessions. The company has taken charge of most of the bill's sales and retail operations and will oversee the new stadium's food and beverage program. We have a commitment to our community that also includes our small businesses who are here regionally, so we wanted to make sure in how we provided support that we're not just focused on the stadium, but we're also focused on the community as a whole, Samaya said. Developments by Jim will host a third cohort of 11 businesses starting in March for a 4-week program on Buffalo's east side.
Mm-hmm. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. And we flip over to the sports now in an article about Lindsey Vonn. Vonn's dad suggests her career is over. Lindsey Vonn's father said Monday that the American superstar will no longer race if he has any influence over her decision, and that she will not return to the Winter Olympics after breaking her leg in the downhill over the weekend. She's 41 years old, and this is the end of her career, Alan Kildo said in a telephone interview with the Associated Press. There will be no more ski races for Lindsey Vonn as long as I have anything to say about it. Kildo and the rest of Vonn's family, a brother and 2 sisters too, have been with Vonn while she is being treated at a hospital in Treviso following her fall and helicopter evacuation from the course in Cortina on Sunday. The hospital late Sunday released a statement saying Vonn had undergone surgery on her left leg, and the U.S. ski team said she was in stable condition. There have not been other updates since. Kildo declined to comment on details of Vonn's injuries, but he did address how she was doing emotionally. She's a very strong individual, Kildo said. She knows physical pain and she understands the circumstances that she finds herself in, and she's able to handle it. Better than I expected. She's a very, very strong person, and so I think she's handling it really well. Kildo, a former ski racer himself, who taught his daughter to race, said he slept in his daughter's hospital room overnight. She has somebody with her, or multiple people with her, at all times, Kildo said. We'll have people here as long as she's here. Kildo and the rest of Vonn's family watched the crash from the finish area with all of the other spectators. First, the shock and the horror of the whole thing, seeing a crash like that, Kildo said of what he felt watching the scene unfold. It can be dramatic and traumatic. You're just horrified at what those kinds of impacts have. You can go into a shock, an emotional, psychological shock, he added, because it's difficult to just accept what's happened. But she's well cared for, and the USOC and the U.S. ski team have a very, very top-notch doctor with her, and she's being treated very well and cared for here in Italy. Vonn raced the downhill despite tearing the ACL in her left knee 9 days earlier in another crash. What happened to her had nothing to do with the ACL issue or her left leg. Nothing, Kildo said. She had demonstrated that she was able to function at a very high level with the 2 downhill training runs, and she had been cleared by high-level physicians to ski. Kildo said the crash was less a result of Vonn's knee injury than the way she pushed the limits of her racing line to the point where she clipped a gate early in her run and got knocked out of control. There are times, sometimes in any race, but especially in downhill, where you have to take a little speed off, he said. You can give yourself a little bit more leeway on the line so you don't put yourself in a questionable position. Vonn, who holds the record of 12 World Cup victories in Cortina, returned to the circuit last season after nearly 6 years of retirement and after a partial titanium replacement surgery in her right knee. She won 2 downhills and finished on the podium in 7 of the 8 World Cup races that she finished this season and came 4th in the other one. She won 84 World Cup races, and not many people do that, Kildow said, referring to Vaughn's victory total, which placed her second on the all-time women's list behind teammate Michaela Schifrin's record 108 wins. And there's a hell of a lot of the difference between a speed race, a downhill, especially and a slalom, Kildow said. Vaughn will not return to the Olympics to cheer on teammates or for anything else, Kildow said. No, she's not that. She's not that in kind of... That's not right. She will be going home at an appropriate point in time. JJ.
I need an editor sometimes. Well, okay, let's... The U.S. women are set to face the Canadians on Tuesday. This is from ice hockey. Kelly Panic couldn't stop laughing watching on TV when all heck broke loose in the U.S.-Canada game at the NHL's Four Nations face-off a year ago. 3 fights breaking out in the opening seconds led the U.S. national women's team forward to reflect on how intense border hockey rivalry has always been. Well, I was cracking up, Panic said. It was so funny because you're like, yep, welcome world to what this looks like. Though the men's side has always had its moments, the tensions and animosity and level of respect has been far more evident in the women's game in what stands as one of the fiercest and most long-running feuds in all of sports. So get ready for the next installment Tuesday when defending Olympic champion Canada faces off against the United States in a preliminary round of the Milan Cortina Games. It's gold or bust, U.S. forward Kendall Coyne Schofield said. That's the stake, as the bar was set in a program, and anything less than a gold medal is a failure. The same holds true up north. There's so much pride that comes with representing Team Canada that I don't think you fully understand until you're wearing that jersey on the bench and you're ready to go, Canadian forward Blair Turnbull said. Especially against Team USA, our biggest rivals. So it's, Turnbull said before a long pause. It's fun. Fun is one way of putting it. Fights? Okay, fights have broken out on various occasions. Many tears have been shed, joyous ones for the winners and heartbreak for the losers. There's a feud that dates back to the U.S. beating Canada to win the gold at the 1998 Nagano Games, the first to feature women's hockey. Over that span, the nations have met a combination of 48 times on the international stage, including World Championship competition. Canada holds the edge with 5 Olympic and 13 world titles, so the Americans are 2-11. A better indication of how tight the series has been is Canada's 25-23 record in having outscored the Americans by a combined margin of 135 and 133. The Americans enter as a tournament favorites. They're the defending world champions after beating Canada 4-3 in overtime in April, and the U.S. has won 6 straight meetings, including a 4-game sweep in the nation's exhibition rivalry series in November and December, which makes you wonder, were there fights? The U.S. outscored Canada 24-7, including a 10-4 win, which marked the most goals a Canadian women have ever allowed in international play. The U.S. features a skilled and speedy team with veteran leadership score led by Captain Hilary Knight. Canada's roster is more experienced, returning 16 players from the team that dominated the 2022 Beijing Games by winning all 7 games and outscoring its opposition 57-10. The Canadians are fine with not being favored. I don't think there's anything bad about being an underdog and proving yourself, forward Natalie Spooner said. The Americans are not buying into the hype. Honestly, it's not something our team talks about, defender Megan Keller said. The goal for us is to bring home a gold medal. It doesn't matter who's in our way. One twist this year is the U.S.-Canada matchup not being the preliminary round closing game for both teams, as has traditionally happened in past international play. The U.S., which is 3-0, and after defeating Switzerland 5-0 on Monday, will complete its 4-game schedule against Canada. The Canadians are a game behind after their tournament opener against Finland was postponed when the Finns roster was depleted by a stomach virus. Canada opened with a 4-0 win over Switzerland. On Monday, Canadian women's hockey captain Marie-Philip Poulin limped off hurt in her team's game against Czechia. Poulin briefly stayed down on the ice after a hard hit from Kristina Kaltunikova, in which the Czech player's upper arm appeared to make contact with Poulin's helmet. Kaltunikova was given a 2-minute penalty on an illegal hit at 8 minutes 52 seconds of the first period.
And the question of the day, will Serena Williams return to play? Oh, that rhymed. Serena Williams passed another stage on the path to a possible comeback to professional tennis, being listed Monday by the Sports Drug Testing Organization as eligible to return to competition on the 22nd of February. That is 6 months after the 23-time Grand Slam singles champion initially registered with the International Tennis Integrity Agency. Williams, who was 44, was listed on the ITIA website's reinstatement page Monday, a development first reported by Bounces. What was not immediately known was when or where, or truly whether, Williams actually will play again. When it was revealed last year that Williams had signed up with the ITIA to return to the drug testing pool, she wrote on social media, "OMG, y'all, I'm not coming back. This wildfire is crazy." Her agent did not immediately return a request for comment Monday, neither did a spokesperson for the WTA Tour. Last year, when word emerged that Williams had made an initial move required for a return, U.S. Tennis Association spokesman Brendan McIntyre said, "If Serena decides to return and compete at the professional level, together with her fans, we will enthusiastically welcome the return of one of the greatest champions in the history of our sport." Williams, one of the greats of the game, has not competed since bidding farewell in the 2022 U.S. Open. At the time, Williams said she didn't want to use the word retiring and instead declared that she was evolving away from tennis. Athletes returning to testing need to provide information on their whereabouts, details on their location when they are not at an official event, and times when they are available to give samples. Someone who retires while they are on the list and later comes back needs to be available for testing for 6 months before they are allowed to return to competition. Williams' older sister, Venus, returned to competition last July at the age of 45 after nearly 1.5 years away from the tour, and she never had announced her retirement. At the U.S. Open, Venus became the oldest player to play singles at the American Grand Slam tournament since 1981. When Venus, a 7-time major singles champion, came back at the D.C. Open, she spoke about wishing Serena would join her back on tour. They claimed 14 Grand Slam double titles as a pair. "I keep saying to my team, the only thing that would make this better is if she was here. Like we always did everything together, so of course I miss her," Venus said at the time when asked about a video on a social media that showed Serena swinging a racket. "But if she comes back, I'm sure she'll let y'all know."
And the Olympics, more headaches for U.S. figure skater. This from Associated Press. On the same day, Amber Glenn won Olympic gold as part of the team event and stepped away from social media due to a backlash over her comments on politics in the LGBTQ plus community. The American figure skater has ended up with another headache. Canadian artist Seb McKinnon, who produces music under the name Clan, took to social media late Sunday to object to the use of his song "The Return," which Glenn had used in her free skate, which she has been using for the past 2 years without issue. "So I just found out an Olympic figure skater used one of my songs without permission for their routine. It aired all over the world. What? Is that usual practice for the Olympics?" McKinnon posted on X shortly after the competition had ended. Figure skaters are required to obtain permission for the music they use, but that process is hardly straightforward. Sometimes a label or record producer owns a copyright, other times the artists themselves, and often there are multiple parties involved. Skaters sometimes will piece together different cuts of music too. Throw in third-party companies such as Click and Clear to try and smooth out the permission process, and the entire copyright issue becomes murky and nuanced. According to McKinnon, the deal I have with my label is that I alone can give the okay to license my music. McKinnon later said that he'd been looking into the situation, but did congratulate Glenn. And plus she won gold. Huge congrats, he posted. Glenn was not available for comment on the music issue Monday. She planned to take the day off from training and then depart to Milan to practice elsewhere ahead of the individual women's event, which begins February 17th with the short program. The issue is not the first bit of controversy involving Glenn at the Milan Cortina Games. The outspoken LGBTQ plus rights activist said she received threats on social media after saying during a pre-Olympics press conference that the queer community is going through a hard time amid the political climate under President Donald Trump. I was disappointed because I had never had so many people wish me harm before, just for me being me and speaking up about being decent, human rights and decency, Glenn said. Sunday night, wearing an LGBTQ plus pin on her team jacket during the team medal ceremony. Copyrights never used to be a problem in figure skating because the International Skating Union barred any music involving vocals, and most classical music is considered public domain. Mm-hmm. But when those rules were relaxed in 2014 and modern music began to be used, artists soon demanded that they receive compensation for their work, and it all came to a head in the 2022 Beijing Olympics, when one of the indie artists who covered House of the Rising Sun objected to its use by American pair skater Alexa Kiernan and Brandon Fraser. The ensuing lawsuit prompted the ISU to step up and try to develop systems that would help skaters avoid copyright infringement claims. It's never been an issue, and then suddenly it is. And I don't understand why, Glenn told the AP ahead of the Winter Games. I understand there was a big upset in the last Olympics because some artists, I'm sorry if they decided to be, jerks. Likewise, they couldn't just appreciate this Olympic team competing. It wasn't even their song to begin with. It was just a cover. Justin Dillon, the director of high performance for U.S. figure skating, said the governing body has tried to help its skaters avoid any copyright claims. It is unclear whether the organization played any role in getting Glenn's music approved.
Okay, and you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 30 minutes past the hour. Let's see what people are asking Eric today. Dear Eric, I have been attending shows of local bands for more than 2 decades and have met a very nice group of people who go to these shows and developed many nice friendships. Due to health reasons, I normally sit in the chairs in the back, will wander and socialize at times, and sometimes at the intermission, I will go up to the front of the stage, standing area not regulated, and socialize and stay for a few songs. I am not a wild dancer. I need the cane to keep my balance. I sway back and forth to the rhythm. Recently, a few minutes after the second half started, a lady came up to me and rudely told me to leave, that I was in her spot. I replied that we were both in front of the stage to enjoy the music. A few minutes later, her husband came up to me and very angrily got in my face, accusing me of hitting his wife with my cane and threatened to beat me up if I did not leave immediately. I tried to explain it was false, but he wasn't listening and repeated his threat, so I left. There was no bouncer at the club to ask for help. I was able to call him and left messages saying I want to talk. No response. I hesitated to go to another show. I do not want to have a confrontation, and I want to reach an understanding so there is no threat of violence going forward. Friends have said they will accompany me and stand by me if something happens, and people who know him say to stop calling him and to just let it go. Signed, Concert Goer. Dear Concert Goer, don't let this man keep you from a good time. From your telling, the problem is his, not yours, and you shouldn't spend more time trying to fix it. So do let it go, but also do keep going to the shows. Take your friends up on the offer to stand with you for your own protection and peace of mind. Hopefully, this confrontation was a one-time thing, possibly fueled by alcohol or something else going on in this couple's life. You've been going to these shows for 20 years and have developed a community. One of the primary functions of community is to show up for us and have our backs. Dear Eric, I've been friends with Terry for more than 25 years. We have been through marriages, divorce, celebrations, and condolences when loved ones passed. Even though we no longer live in the same city, we still remain close through emails, texts, and phone calls. The issue is her husband, Bill. He's a bit of a blowhard, and no one likes to be around him. My husband really doesn't like Bill, and since we no longer live in the same city, it's generally not an issue. We are going on a cruise and have invited my sister to join us. She has extended the invitation to another friend who is also friends with Terry and Bill. My sister asked her friend not to mention the cruise to Terry and Bill because she knows my husband would refuse to go if Bill was going. What do I do if they find out and decide to join us? I don't want to go with them because I know my husband would not enjoy himself, and frankly, neither would I. Should I be frank with Terry and tell her Bill, and therefore both are crashing our party? Signed, Sinking Ship. Dear ship, there's a skiff full of ifs that have to happen before Terry and Bill come aboard your boat. But if they do find out, even though your sister asked her friend not to say anything, and if they do decide to come on the trip, and if they ask you to make room on your itinerary, then you should be direct but not unkind and tell Terry that you appreciate her friendship, but you're not vacation friends because of the way you feel about Bill. I'm not saying this is an easy thing, nor that it's going to go over well. It probably won't, I agree. But if you don't want to go on vacation with Bill and you don't want to cancel your ticket, then you have to be direct. However, don't let your frankness be a hard no. Make it a no, but. You can't forbid them from coming on the cruise, nor should you try. But you can ask Terry if there are other ways that you could be together, whether it's a visit for just the two of you or something else. Here's hoping it doesn't come to all that, and you can enjoy the cruise without a tough conversation. DJ?
My goodness. Well, back to national news from the Associated Press's Tennessee Vapongsa. World War II vets celebrates a milestone and long-time service. Aboard the battleship New Jersey, surrounded by friends, family, and important legacy, Johnny Q. Quinesso Sr. marked a milestone, his 100th birthday. A World War II Navy veteran and longtime volunteer was honored last week with a special luncheon and recognition ceremony on the nation's most decorated battleship. The celebration was Thursday. His actual birthday was January 24th. For Quinesso, a lifelong South Jersey resident, the celebration was not just about longevity, it was about service that has never stopped. Apart from serving in 3 wars in the South Pacific as a radio man second class, the World War II veteran has spent more than 2 decades volunteering at the Battleship New Jersey Museum, sharing his experience and educating students and visitors from around the world. I call the Battleship New Jersey my second home, Quinesso said. I've been a tour guide here for over 20 years. It's one of the most wonderful things I've ever done in my life. For Quinesso, teaching visitors about the Battleship New Jersey is about more than history. It's about understanding the cost of freedom. To let them know that without the battleship, we might not be able to start building our freedom today, he said. Quinesso joined the Navy straight out of high school in 1943 at 19 years old. Trained as a radio operator, he served aboard the LSM-302, a medium landing ship that delivered troops, tanks, and supplies to the beaches across the Pacific. His service took him to Wake Island, Guam, Okinawa, and Saipan during some of the war's most intense fighting. One moment, however, stands out above all the others. At the coast of Guam, the crew at that point was preparing for a potentially devastating invasion of Japan with ships on the ocean as far as one could see. One night, while standing in the midnight watch on the radio, Quinesso received a transmission that would change the world. The message read, "The Japanese have surrendered. The war is over," he recalled. I ran right down to the captain and banged on his door. Quinesso said that after all hell broke loose on the ship with the crew crying and hugging each other, that was the most glorious moment. I'll never forget it. It feels like yesterday. After returning home, Quinesso built a 43 career as an IRS agent, but when the Battleship New Jersey reopened as a museum in 2001, he found a new calling, educating future generations about sacrifice, service, and history. Marshall Spivak CEO of the Battleship New Jersey Museum said Knessel's presence carries a special weight as time pushes the history of World War II further back into the past. There's still a certain reverence when you talk to a World War II veteran, he said. There will only be a few more years where we still have World War II vets in the world. That's why it's so important that we continue to tell their stories so their legacy lives on. At 100, Knessel remains sharp, warm, and quick with humor. He often tells students that service helped shape his life. I went in as a young boy and came out a grown young man, Knessel said. That's what the service did for me. During last week's ceremony, Knessel received New Jersey's the Distinguished Service Medal, the state's highest military award.
I just heard that the average day 100 veterans from that war die, obviously, because they're older, but that's a scary thought. We have to keep that alive. And so 2 veteran Erie County legislators will step down at the end of the year, shaking up the Republican landscape. 2 veteran Erie County legislators, comprising half of the county legislature's Republican caucus, have chosen not to run for re-election when their term expires at the end of this year. That includes longtime incumbent John Mills, a Republican of Orchard Park, who has served in his 11th district seat for 2 decades and is by far the most senior legislator in the governing body. Also stepping down after this year is Chris Green, a Republican from Clarence, who has served as a District 6 county legislator since 2021. Meanwhile, 2 other candidates have stepped forward and received Republican Party endorsements on Saturday. They are Orchard Park Town Councilman Scott Honer, who is running for Mills' seat, and former county legislator and state senator Ed Rath of Amherst, who was succeeded by Green and will now run again for that seat. Mills, 79, said he's ready to take things slower and spend more time with his family. His 11th district includes Orchard Park, Evans, Eden, Boston, Brant, North Collins, and part of Hamburg. I'm spread out kind of thin, said Mills, who has also owned and operated a food distribution company for the past 50 years. I'm not a young man anymore. He said he'd been thinking of stepping down for the last several years and told people last year he wouldn't run again. But I've been there so long that nobody believes me anymore, he said. Mills said he was adamant about giving up the seat, even though there's much about the job of legislator that he still loves. I'm going to miss it a lot, he said. I think it's time I spent a little more time with family. Green, who's 51, informed Republican leadership and colleagues he would not run because of work, family, and other commitments. His 6th district seat includes Clarence, Newstead, and parts of Amherst. Green has been an active contributor to the Republican Minority Caucus and committee discussions over the past 5 years. He also works as a sales rep for a tech company. I think it just happens to be a moment in time for Legislator Green where he's got a lot of other important issues in his life, including supporting his son's outstanding hockey career, said Michael Cracker, chairman of the Erie County Republican Party. Green did not respond to a request for a comment on his decision. It's rare for a Republican seat to become open when the incumbent hasn't either been campaigning for higher office or has recently been defeated in an election. Multiple people stepped forward for consideration for Mills and Green's seat, Cracker said, but ultimately both Honer and Rath rose to the top and received unanimous endorsements. They did a good making the case that in an election year where they are expected to face Democratic challengers, they are willing to put in the hard campaign work to keep the seats in Republican hands, Cracker said. That's why we're so focused on having a bench of people who are not only electable, are capable of governing consistent with the values of the Republican Party, Cracker said, but ultimately delivering for the taxpayers that they represent. Honer, who has served as an Orchard Park Town Councilman since 2022, won 2 terms and served as a successful campaign manager for Orchard Park Supervisor Joseph Liberty. A senior credit analyst with an audiovisual distributor and deputy town supervisor, he said he feels comfortable campaigning and is used to being available to constituents and doing the legwork needed to resolve civic issues. He said he plans to bring that attentiveness to a legislature seat and promote issues of affordability, safety, and road work. When I joined with Orchard Park here, it was about bridging differences, said Honer at 55. So that's the same focus I have for this district, trying to bridge and bring some common sense to the arena. Honer knows how to build a strong campaign, Cracker said. He's a proven worker, and he helps politically, but he's also going to benefit the community governmentally because he is somebody who's shown he's willing to put the time in and do the work. And I think that's helpful in politics, but it's even more helpful in doing the job. Rath, who's 58, is no political newbie. The seat he's running for now is one he previously held from 2008 to 2020, when he was elected to the state Senate. The Amherst resident lost his Senate seat after redistricting in 2022 and has been focused on his job as an energy consultant, something he has done for the past 35 years. He said he'll focus on reintroducing himself to the district, rebuilding a relationship of trust with voters, and focusing on issues of public safety, transparency, accountability, and economic development. I'm going to be face-to-face, door-to-door, and eye-to-eye with the constituents as I've always run my campaign, he said. Cracker said Rath has the benefit of having done all this before. He's represented every resident in this community at some point in his career, he said. He's going to have a great, very short learning curve coming back to the legislature and has proven the ability to raise the resources to deliver his message and then to deliver on the job for his constituents. PJ?
And again, in national news, detained migrants face dire conditions and long waits. And this is from Gisela Solomon of the Associated Press. Felipe Hernandez Espinosa spent 45 days at Alligator Alcatraz, an immigration holding center in Florida where detainees have reported worms in their food, toilets that don't flush, and overflowing sewage. Mosquitoes and other insects are everywhere. For the past 5 months, a 34-year-old asylum seeker has been at an immigration detention camp at Fort Bliss Army Base in El Paso, Texas, where 2 migrants died in January, which has many of the same conditions, according to the human rights groups. Hernandez said he asked to be returned to Nicaragua, but was told he had to see a judge. After nearly 7 months in detention, his hearing was scheduled for February 26th. Prolonged detention has become common in President Trump's second term, at least partly because a new policy generally prohibits immigration judges from releasing detainees while their deportation cases wind through backlog courts. Many, like Hernandez, are prepared to give up any efforts to stay in the United States. I came to this country thinking they would help me, and I've been detained for 6 months without having committed a crime, he said in a phone interview from Fort Bliss. It's been too long. I'm desperate. The Supreme Court ruled in 2001 that Immigration and Customs Enforcement cannot hold immigrants indefinitely, finding that 6 months was a reasonable cap. With the number of people in ICE detention topping 70,000 for the first time, 7,252 people have been in custody at least 6 months in mid-January, including 79 held for more than 2 years, according to agency data. That's more than double the 2,849 who were in ICE custody at least 6 months in December of 2024, the last full month of Joe Biden's presidency. The Trump administration is offering plane fare and $2,600 for people who leave the country voluntarily, yet Hernandez and others are told they can't leave detention until seeing a judge. The first 3 detainees and attorney Ana Alicia Huerta met on her monthly trip to an ICE detention center in McFarland, California to offer free legal advice. In January, said they signed a form agreeing to leave the United States, but we're still waiting. All are telling me I don't understand why I'm here. I'm ready to be deported, said Huerta, a senior attorney at the California Collaborative for Immigrant Justice. That's an experience that I've never had before. In the past, Huerta said she encountered cases like this one every 3 or 4 months. The Department of Homeland Security did not address questions from the Associated Press about why more people are being held longer than 6 months. The waiting time may depend on the country. Deportations to Mexico are routine, but countries including Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia, and Venezuela have in times resisted accepting deportees. Among those detained for months are people who have won protection under the United Nations Convention Against Torture, who cannot be deported to their home country but may be sent elsewhere. In the past, those migrants who were released and could get a work permit Not anymore, says Sarah Houston, managing attorney at Immigrant Defenders Law Center, who has at least 3 clients with protection under the UN Torture Convention who have been in custody for more than 6 months. One is from El Salvador, detained for 3 years. He won his case in October of 2025, but is still in custody in California. They're just holding these people indefinitely, said Houston, noting that every 90 days attorneys request the release of these migrants and ICE denies those requests. We're seeing people who actually win their immigration cases just languishing in jail. Hernandez, who doesn't have a lawyer, said he signed documents requesting to return to his company or Mexico at least 5 times. An October 9th hearing was abruptly canceled without explanation. He waited months with no news until early February when he learned his new hearing date. Hernandez, who has allergies and needs a gluten-free diet, says he hasn't been getting since November, was arrested in July on a lunch break from his job installing power generators in South Florida. His wife was detained with him, but a judge allowed her to return to Nicaragua without a formal deportation order on August 28th. Both crossed the Mexican border in 2022 and requested asylum. He said he received death threats after participating in marches against co-presidents and spouses Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo. If he returns, they plan to go to Panama or Spain because they fear for their lives in Nicaragua, he said. His files say only that his case is pending. Yaciel Almonte Mejia has been detained 8 months since the government sought dismissal of his asylum case last May, and his aunt Judith Mejia Lanfranco. Since then, he's been transferred from a detention center in Florida to Texas to New Mexico. In November, Almonte married his pregnant American girlfriend via video call and became the father of a daughter he hasn't seen in person. He was unable to attend the funeral of his sister who died in November. He's gone through depression. He has been very bad, his aunt said. He's desperate and he doesn't even know what's going to happen. Almonte, 29, came to the U.S. in 2024 and told authorities he cannot return to the Dominican Republic because he fears for his life. In January, he passed his initial assignment screening interview. Some detainees are finding relief in federal court. A Mexican man detained in October of 2024 in Florida was held for a year, even though he wanted protection under the UN Torture Convention in March of 2025. Time was passing and I was desperate, afraid they would send me to another country, said the 38-year-old, who spoke on condition of anonymity for fear of being detained again. I don't know what was going to happen to me, he said, noting that immigration officials weren't giving him any answers. The man who said he lived illegally in the United States from age 10 until he was deported. In Mexico, he ran his own business, but in 2023, he decided to return and illegally cross the border into the United States. He said he was looking for safety after being threatened by drug cartels who demanded monthly payments. He was taking antidepressants when he found an attorney who filed a petition in federal court alleging he was being held illegally. He was freed in October of 2025, 7 months after a judge ordered his release. Before Hernandez, the Nicaraguan asylum seeker, desperation led him to the request to be returned to the country he'd fled. I have experienced a lot of trauma. It's very difficult, Hernandez said from Fort Bliss. I'm always thinking about when I'm going to get out.
It's a tough spot.
It's terrible.
Let's move over to the political notebook. From New York, reports Trump's CFPB changes costs for $19 billion. 1 year after the Trump administration took control of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the consumer watchdog has largely retreated from enforcement and regulatory work, changes that consumer advocates and Democrats now estimate have cost Americans at least $19 billion in financial relief. In a report provided to the Associated Press ahead of its release by the office of Senator Elizabeth Warren, a Democrat from Massachusetts, on Monday, the authors said the CFPB harmed consumers by abandoning major consumer protections, stalling investigations, and dismissing a number of lawsuits. The administration and congressional Republicans have argued that the Bureau needed to be downsized and reined in because it has grown too large and overreaching. The administration assumed control of the CFPB last February after Rohit Chopra, the Bureau's director under President Joe Biden, resigned, leaving White House Budget Director Russell Vought as acting director. Since then, few new investigations have been opened, many employees have been ordered not to work, and several pending enforcement actions against financial companies have been dropped. A CFBP spokeswoman did not respond to a request from comment. And from the District of Columbia, Trump plans to appeal rail tunnel fund order. The Trump administration plans to appeal a temporary court order that blocks the federal government from withholding funds for a $16 billion rail tunnel linking New York and New Jersey. The Gateway Development Commission is building the new tunnel, but had to stop construction late Friday because it's exhausted all of its funding sources. The Trump administration has been in a standstill with Gateway since October, when it halted funding for the tunnel over a new rule that prohibits contracting requirements based on race or sex. New York and New Jersey sued the administration on the 3rd of February in federal court after Gateway filed its own suit a day earlier in an effort to unlock more than $205 million of federal funds in the Court of Federal Claims. U.S. District Judge Jeanette Vargas on Friday sided with the states and ordered the federal government to release the funds. That money may not be coming soon, as the Department of Transportation late Sunday filed a notice of appeal, according to a court filing. The tunnel project will help relieve congestion in the existing tube, which is over 100 years old. And also from the District of Columbia, fired federal workers would face rehiring hurdles. The Trump administration is trying to make it harder for fired federal employees to get their jobs back, according to a government plan released on Monday, by limiting their right to appeal their dismissal to an independent board. The Office of Personnel Management proposed ending the rights of fired federal employees to dispute their dismissal before the Independent Merit Systems Protection Board, according to the plan. Instead, fired workers would need to appeal to OPM, an office whose director reports to President Trump. The Merit System Protection Board mediates disputes between federal workers and their employers. The board saw a spike in new cases after Trump took office for the second time. The board's caseload jumped 266% from October 1st through the 2024 to September 30th, 2025. JJ?
Well, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, February 10th of 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, please call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Lita
and JJ Patek. Thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have